everyone was surprised by what happened when a monkey was tossed into a lion's cage. Long shadows were cast across the immaculate pathways of the San Diego Zoo by the morning sun, as Dr. McRoss, with her white coat billowing in the cool morning breeze, Sarah Mitchell rushed through the staff entrance like she usually does. She held a manila folder with the most recent exam, her calm manner giving way to an eager determination. However, the news wasn't good, and their youngest resident's time was dwindling out. Sarah asked James how he was doing. Standing outside the specialized enclosure, the senior zookeeper's haggard visage was marked with perplexity. "Please remember to subscribe to our channel and give it a like if this story piques your interest. Tell us which." James shook his head and his eyes, saying, "Let's continue," still refusing to eat. "Third day in a row. From the city you are watching. I've never seen anything like the little creature curled in the habitat's corner, DOC. It seems as though he's Max, a 3-month-old African lion cub that had been given up, was still, except for the separation. His disease was a rare bone fragility that caused his chest to rise and fall shallowly, making every movement a potential danger. But the staff was more concerned about his extreme loneliness than his physical condition." Sarah muttered as she went over the most recent readings that his mother's rejection had struck him hard, seemingly shattering his spirit. The monitors monitoring Max's vital signs on her tablet displayed an increasing pH, a floating average of over 4 points, although he might not survive in the wild. For a long time he could not move, for he lay in his bed by his washing machine, ready for his awakening. James is now alone because his mother made a decision that spared him from a terrible fate. Completed stroking his graying hair, the other lions refused to embrace him, since they can tell his distinction. Sarah pinched her lips together, her thoughts running through the various fixes they had attempted: physical therapy, particular diets, and even playing lion recordings cubs to mimic friendship. But nothing appeared to be able to get beyond Max's barrier of seclusion. While they were debating their choices, they noticed a disturbance coming from the adjacent primate center. Charlie A., known for his adventures at reading minds on a relaxing balanced pedestal and not sleeping with unfavorable bodies, had masturbated. An act possibly Venusian for him, but did away with his adventure to calm his viewings. Due to his proficiency with tools and ability to solve challenging puzzles, the primate had gained some local celebrity status. Sarah saw Charlie's nimble moves as he swung from branch to branch, eliciting laughter and applause from the audience. Something about his lively playfulness and perceptive gaze inspired an idea. "James," she replied slowly, "my mind is crazy, unprecedented, and potentially revolutionary." The senior zookeeper cocked an eyebrow, asking, "What if we tried something completely different?" With Charlie's gaze still fixated on mine. "You see, Doctor, what do you think about the way we've been handling this? We've been attempting to replace what Max lost: his pride in his mother. But perhaps he doesn't need a new family." James followed her eyes to Charlie, who was now systematically taking a break, suggesting that perhaps he needs something completely different. "You can't be serious," he replied, referring to the puzzle feeder that was made to keep him busy. When he realized what she was proposing, a lion and a monkey, his eyes widened because it had never been done before. He stared at Julius. His eyes widened and widened until Julia had to lift her arm to suppress a smile. Sarah answered precisely, her voice brimming with excitement. "It's never been completed since nobody has been desperate enough to try to look at Charlie, who is smart, flexible, and most interesting. He's fearless, which is crucial since he can be just what Max needs, or it could be a," although Sarah could see the gleam of hope in his eyes, "catastrophe." James warned her the board would never allow it. Sarah answered forcefully, startling herself with her own bravery. "And we don't ask for permission. Instead, we portray it as an emergency assistance. Max's condition is fast getting worse, and we don't have time." I was relieved that he was thinking about the potential that I could set up emergency procedures. 24/7 surveillance, and we'll have to pick the ideal time, as Sarah mentioned earlier, bringing up the zoos. As they started to sketch out the plan, we scheduled a time on her tablet when we could introduce them with little outside pressure. Neither of them observed the slight movement coming from Max's area of the enclosure for the specifics of their unconventional strategy. The lion cub raised his head for the first time in days, his ears perking up at Charlie's happy chattering from the adjacent enclosure filled the air as the breeze carried the aroma of change. Rustling through the leaves at the zoo that morning, creating possibilities no one had previously dared to think about, Sarah understood deep down that they were going to set off on a voyage that would either result in a very heavy burden or a wonderful success. When they had no idea if it would be a stunning flop or a wonderful success, choice would start a series of events that would not only change Max's life, but also present and everything they believed to be true about the limits of friendship and the therapeutic value of non-traditional therapy. The next week's connections brought a rush of secret planning as Sarah and James diligently tried to alter in Max's enclosure, extra climbing frames, safety nets, and emergency exits, while attempting to keep things feeling normal and predictable. A thick layer of fog covered the zoo on the morning of their scheduled intervention, which was an unexpected ally, James murmured. Privacy, an ideal weather for breaking all the rules. The zoo wouldn't be open to the public for another 3 hours, so the security feeds gave them a final window of opportunity. Sarah's pulse was racing as she stood in front of Max's enclosure. With the exception of the occasional drink of water, the lion had not left his corner in days, and his golden fur had become dull. Even when his eyes were open, there was a void that made her feel completely cold. Running out, "Are you positive that this is Dr. Rodriguez, the senior at the zoo?" As he prepared a sedative kit in case this could end, the veterinarian inquired. Sarah responded, "Max won't make it through the month if we don't try something dramatic." Despite her internal conflict, her voice remained firm. "I would rather lose my job than lose him." The team observed Charlie being cautiously moved from his cage in a makeshift carrier, and the Capucine appeared to remarkably composed, his perceptive eyes absorbing all the information about his environment Sarah had spent the previous week. I became more and more convinced of his extraordinary intelligence and emotional sensitivity, made him the ideal choice for this novel experiment. Keep in mind, Sarah warned the small group of people gathered around her, not to move suddenly or make loud noises. We must make this change as seamless as possible. Charlie must feel as though he is learning about Max's. James set up his enclosure by himself, close to the emergency release mechanism, and Dr. Rodriguez was waiting. There was a noticeable sense of anxiety in the air as they got ready to either see a miracle or an unavoidable catastrophe. They carefully and precisely opened Charlie's carrier close to one of the climbing frames. After the Capuchin was fitted, he paused for a few periods before emerging, his eagerness showing in every motion he made. Max calmly investigated his new surroundings, apparently unaware of the nervous people holding their breath. Raised by the tiny alterations in his surroundings, he raised his head a little, and his nostrils flared, taking in the stranger's nostrils. For the first time in days, his new friend's aroma piqued his interest. Flashed in his eyes as Charlie's exploration led him to Max's corner, where the monkey was moving, were purposeful, almost elegant, and as he moved from one building to another, he occasionally stopped to look something intriguing, as a leaf, a toy, or a sliver of sunshine. As Charlie started making his own amusement out of items in the fog, the humans gazed in awe. He found a hollow ball that was one of Max's unused enrichment toys, in an unexpected way, created to deliver food, and started rolling it over the ground, attracting the lion cub's attention. "Take a look at phrase," Sarah muttered, gripping her tablet so firmly that her knuckles went white. "He's really using the environment, which surpasses our initial expectations." But the true breakthrough occurred in a moment. One may have anticipated that Charlie would discover a tiny mirror that had been placed, as the Capuchin's obsession with his reflection is a component of Max's enrichment program, made a succession of gentle, questioning noises that, for the first time, seemed to speak to Max's innermost thoughts. In days, the lion cub turned to observe Charlie's antics using the mirror. The motion was tiny, but it could have passed as a leap across the enclosure to the team watching. James inhaled in response. Almost afraid to touch Sarah, he's really answering Charlie. Whether by chance or purpose, he started playing a game with his reflection that led him to Max's corner, where the monkey played. Sarah's attitude appeared to ease the tension in the air and replace it with something more upbeat and cheerful. The scientific mind rushed to record every encounter and minute change in behavior, but her heart was won over by the basic beauty of what was happening. Before her, two creatures, who were divided by the deepest differences in nature, were discovering a means of sharing the same space. And as the morning wore on, Charlie's presence kept up its subtle enchantment. Never spoke to Max directly, but his actions produced a soft vibe that appeared to permeate the bay. By mid-morning, Max had moved to a new location, inside the lion cub's shell of isolation. Sarah eventually declared, "Through every fiber of our being, we must leave them in order to better observe his new companion. Since she chose to stay and observe, they must establish their own dynamic independently of our team's intervention." Withdrew grudgingly to the viewing area. None of them could have anticipated the remarkable sequence of events that would transpire over the next few days. They had taken a risk and crossed previously unexplored boundaries. Challenged already, but their experiment's true test was only getting started. When the first guests came at the zoo, the fog began to clear, and they had no idea that they were going to see the beginnings of behind the scenes. Sarah started crafting one of the most amazing tales of improbable friendship ever recorded, the first of numerous notebook entries, understanding that regardless of the success or failure of their experiment, they were already satisfied. Making history, Charlie and Max's first week together brought a number of minor triumphs that offered Sarah and her group cautious hope. Every day unveiled fresh facets of their evolving dynamic. However, on the morning of the 6th day, Sarah came, there were some tense moments that left everyone on edge. Charlie was early to discover a strange situation taking place in the enclosure. He had collected a number of the enrichment items into a pile close to the middle of the room, carefully positioning them in what seemed to be a planned design. Max, who had slowly started to leave his corner and observed the events with obvious interest. "He's making a James in the playground," heard his voice full of wonder. Comparable items in his last enclosure, although they were never nearly as good as the Capuchins. Intelligence was evident in each deliberate placement, as if he knew instinctively that Max's situation necessitated taking extra care to place softer objects nearer to the lion cub's favorite spot to relax, while Sarah saw that he was checking the stability of each item while maintaining a respectful distance from the more difficult ones. The breakthrough moment arrived while he was feverishly documenting her findings, almost as if he was childproofing the area. Charlie started a nice game of roll and fetch after choosing a soft rubber ball from Max's untouched toys. The ball moved in a deliberate ballet of approach and retreat to get a little bit closer to Max's location. The staff's astonishment at Max's response exceeded all expectations. Of retreating, he watched the ball's trajectory with growing curiosity, and when it eventually rolled within his line of sight, he thought it would be cosplay and tentatively reached out to touch it. "This is incredible," and tentatively reached out to touch it. "I've never witnessed such a high degree of interest-based conversation as I did when I joined them at the observation glass." Charlie is adjusting his behavior in accordance with Max's limitations, since he naturally recognizes them. Events caused the zoo's research team to become extremely busy, and Sarah's unauthorized experiment was starting to hit the well. It is hard to overlook highlighting the distinctive character of other departments. Despite their efforts to preserve the delicate secrecy that permitted this, the circumstances required documentation. Unusual relationship to grow as the days went by. Charlie's arrival to influence minor yet noteworthy modifications in Max's conduct. The lion cub began demonstrating awareness of his surroundings. His movements become more deliberate but still cautious as a result of his condition. Particularly his appetite started to improve, and his most recent blood work demonstrates a noticeable difference, Sarah mentioned at an unplanned team meeting. Their nutritional levels are finally stabilized, and stress indications are declining. But not everyone at the zoo expressed the team's excitement and informed the board of directors that their unusual experiment had reached the top. Amid contentious discussions on safety procedures and the consequences for public relations, that every day they felt more pressure to defend their choices. Sarah, we need more time, argued in a particularly heated board meeting that what we're seeing here has the potential to transform our comprehension of cross-spaces socializing and animal rehabilitation. The situation reached a crucial moment when guests started to notice the odd pairing social. Photos and videos of Charlie and Max went viral in the media, generating both praise and criticism for the zoo, at the heart of an expanding discussion on animal welfare and ecological boundaries. Yet, amid the dispute, something extraordinary was taking place inside the enclosure. And Charlie's presence appeared to ignite something in Max, who went beyond simple physical development. The lion cub initially displayed timid playfulness. Then, with increasing assurance, one afternoon when it was quiet and the majority of guests had gone, Sarah saw something that made her cry. Charlie had been using a puzzle feeder, when he purposefully broke off a piece of fruit and put it close to Max, one of his favorite enrichment activities. Spoke eloquently about the depth of understanding growing between two unusual people in a straightforward yet meaningful way, James said, his voice full of emotion, as he and his companions shared lunch. I've worked with animals for years, but I've never seen anything like this. The episode was a turning point, and Max started reacting more forcefully to Charlie's advances in their relationship. Despite his physical restrictions, his movements became more confident, and the Capuchin appeared to take joy in his role as friend and guardian, frequently setting up his position to maintain watch while Max slept and Sarah provided updates. That night, she considered how their desperate attempt had turned into something in her study journal, considerably more important than anyone could have imagined. They weren't merely witnessing an uncommon animal bond, and the peace of a man tending to his garden was beginning to break down in the form of mental struggles. They were seeing the walls of nature being broken down in ways that contradicted everything they believed. They were aware of animal behavior, but they were unaware of their biggest obstacles and most amazing realizations. There are still discoveries to be made, but Max and Charlie's growing friendship would be put to the test in ways that none of them could have predicted, making them consider not only the limits between species, but the very essence of friendship itself. The unexpected arrival of the San Diego summer difficulties. As the weather forecast warned of an impending storm system, gloomy clouds began to build on the horizon, severe the area had witnessed in years, and plans were in place inside the zoo to guarantee everyone's protection. Animals, too, but Sarah was especially worried about Max and Charlie's cage. We must strengthen these climbing structures they erected on a regular basis, after James insisted on inspecting them. He didn't finish the phrase because of the approaching winds, but Sarah understood. The environment in the enclosure reflected their unusual setup, which wasn't intended for harsh weather. Charlie, who is usually lively and amusing, is experiencing increasing tension outside, showed signs of extraordinary restlessness, becoming increasingly irregular in his movements and constantly looking up at the dark sky. Animals frequently detected impending weather changes before they were apparent through the upper areas of the enclosure. People could, and Charlie's actions made it quite evident that something important was coming. See how he's gathering items? Dr. Rodriguez noticed this while checking on Charlie in the morning. Started gathering different soft items and toys to create what seemed to be a protected nest close to Max's favorite. When he is at rest, his attentiveness to Max's needs is astounding. Max, whose development over the previous few weeks had impressed the team as a whole, appeared to detect his friend's discomfort. The lion cub had become more resilient due to his condition, still needed to be carefully managed, but he was more assured than previously and maintained a deliberately describing his continuous struggles as the storm drew near. Sarah made the challenging choose to spend the night in the zoo, because we can't afford to take any chances, told her worried coworkers that since this will be their first significant weather event together, we must be. The evening brought the first heavy rainfall, and they were ready for anything. Lightning blazed across the sky and then rolled, banging harder and harder against the enclosure roof. The actual test of Max and Charlie's bond was about to begin, with thunder that seemed to tremble the zoo's foundation. Rather than taking cover for himself, Charlie's initial response to the storm startled everyone in the vicinity. Impulse was to see how Max was doing, so the Capuchin deliberately moved, applying his exceptional problem-solving abilities to ease modifying the enrichment materials Sarah mentioned, making the room safer for them both. Charlie placed larger objects in strategic locations to provide windbreaks. Observe how he uses the rubber matting. In fact, the storm reached its peak about midnight, as the wind howled through the zoo, carrying gigantic transports. During this natural disaster, debris clattered on the enclosure's protective barriers. Rage that something unusual occurred, something that would alter the team's perspective on the bond between their unusual couple. One of the more recent climbers was uprooted by a particularly strong gust of wind, causing it to tumble to the ground with a loud bang. The sound surprised both animals, but their response, instead of scattering in fear, Charlie and Max Drew disregarded their natural instincts. As they grew closer, Sarah marveled as Charlie took up defensive positions close to Max. Instead of displaying any signs of fear, his tiny body was attentive and prepared for the lion cub. Or hostility seems to find solace in his companion's company. Their odd alliance was stronger than any want to break apart, and they weathered the storm's worst. Dilemma that transcends mere cohabitation, Dr. Rodriguez said in his interview. What we're witnessing now is true bonding behavior. Their voices are hardly audible over the storm, helping one another through this. As the night went on, the storm started to lessen, but its effects on the hospital would soon make it worse. For days to come, the zoo would be affected by the uprooted trees, flooded pathways, and several of the exhibits in Max and Charlie's cage still have minimal damage. The morning light showed the magnitude of the storm's strength and preservation of something extraordinary, impact, but it also revealed something else that Max and Charlie were worn out by, but unhurt, sleeping soundly next to one another. The sight made Sarah cry. Eyes, what started out as a last-ditch effort, had developed into something much deeper than anyone could have imagined. But the zoo would turn out to be as misleading as the quiet after the storm. When they started their recovery operations, none of them recognized that the media attention would be their biggest obstacle yet. Their peculiar pairing was set to face unanticipated repercussions, which would require them to defend not only their techniques, but the foundation of what they had established. The relationship between Max and Charlie would shortly encounter its biggest test from human action, rather than the wrath of nature, as Sarah started to feel like she had made a fatal mistake in trying to tell people how to live. I knew I was doing the right thing, irrespective of the regrets. As Sarah started to tell people how to live, as Sarah started to talk to other people, the actual storm appeared to be just getting started, which was both amazing and terrifying. The storm's aftermath gave the San Diego Zoo news sources unexpected and anticipated coverage. The story of Max and Charlie's improbable friendship, whose weather defies bond, had gained national attention. Amateur videos of the couple cuddling during the storm went viral, grabbing hearts all around the world. Sarah sat in her office, gazing at her computer screen with increasing concern over her inbox, feeling both appreciation and scrutiny. Sanderson felt increasingly unwelcome after his stories were embedded in the public. She was inundated with correspondence from zoo directors, scholars, and media worldwide. Although many showed sincere interest in science, the pressure was more than she could handle. The pressure was unsparing, however. Had you witnessed James storm into her office with a tablet in hand? The headline, "SN Prestigious Wildlife Park Offers Record Sum for Innovative," captured Sarah's heart. The article by Capuchin described how Singapore's Evolution Gardens, a state-of-the-art facility, was getting ready for a significant offer to purchase Charlie for their primate research program. But Sarah maintained that they couldn't simply take him. Even though she sounded doubtful, their relationship is essential to Max's recuperation. Severing it now could ruin what we've accomplished. But that afternoon, the zoo's board of directors had taken notice of the offer. Sarah was confronted by a group of administrators who were all keen to talk about the proposal's financial ramifications. Director Thompson said, "This is a unique opportunity." He measured and professionalized the funds from this transfer could help our conservation efforts for many years to come. But we must take into account the bigger picture, Sarah felt. See, putting the larger good ahead of professional poise. What about the breakthrough we're seeing right now, Max and everything we believe to be true about interspecies friendships is called into question by Charlie's relationship. Their tale could transform animal rehabilitation techniques globally. While remaining in the cage and unaware of the human drama, Max and Charlie's incredible bond became stronger as events unfolded around them. Acquired a remarkable talent for determining when Max wanted to sleep, modifying his playtime to suit the lion cub's physical restrictions. Max had started displaying protective tendencies toward his smaller friend, putting himself in between Charlie and any strange noises or motions that Dr. Rodriguez's planned for his struggle to resolve his attitudes of panic attacks. According to recent medical evaluations, Max's bone state has improved promisingly. He explained the regular movement throughout their weekly exam, which showed a tiny but continuous improvement in density, and social contact appeared to be promoting his innate healing mechanisms, allowing this bond to be broken. Having exercised the focus on his recuperation, the matter became urgent when officials from Puerto de Sierra. Sarah watched anxiously when Evolution Gardens arrived for an inspection visit and looked at Charlie. What worried her the most while taking notes and talking about his possible contribution to their study program was how, instead of seeing him as a person who could develop strong emotional bonds, they appeared to see him as a specimen throughout the workouts. When the reps walked up to the enclosure to have a closer look, Charlie, something extraordinary happened. Displayed a surprising behavior rather than displaying his typical liveliness and intelligence. Retreated to Max's side, obviously prioritizing friendship over skill. The degree of social connectedness is astounding, as one of the guests muttered while scrawling frantically in his notepad. Unheard of, which further increases his value for our research that night, while Sarah updated her research journal. Saw minor alterations in the behavior of both animals, as though they were aware of the situation, but they smiled less frequently, so their body language remained similar. Charlie was always in his line of sight, and when he was near Charlie, he always paid attention to Charlie's motions, making sure Charlie was always in his line of sight. Charlie typically reaches his hands up to a tree to hold on to something of weight, but despite invisible dangers, adventures remained nearer to his companion, and their bond was clearly enhanced. The marketing division of the zoo recognized a chance in the increasing media coverage and suggested a unique exhibition with Max and Charlie, offering educational events and merchandise, while the more money could support their mission. But Sarah was concerned about how more scrutiny would affect their vulnerable status. She cautioned during a staff meeting that we must exercise caution in our relationship, since they are not circus performers. A sincere connection that merits our defense and reverence. But as public awareness increased, so did the difficulties of discrimination. Despite that safety, tourists flocked to the viewing windows for hours in the hopes of catching unique moments. Social media was ablaze with hypotheses and conversations around the unexpected friends' relationship. The straightforward, pure connection that had saved Max's life was spreading throughout the world. Sarah was particularly concerned about the increasing interest from scientific organizations in Evolution Gardens. Charlie was the only facility showing interest in him, and each new offer included more incentives, making it more important that they meet for the 2 Sunday afternoons when she observed Max and Charlie spending a peaceful moment together in their favorite garden. Sarah recognized that they were at a crossroads in the corner of the enclosure, and the success of their experiment had posed a risk to its continuation. The issue was no longer merely one of safeguarding their bodily health, but, as the sun went down, they preserved the spirit of what made their relationship so unique. At twilight, Max and the zoo's gathering threw long shadows over the enclosure. Charlie stayed together, their silhouettes blending into one form against the sky's fading light. Endured one storm together, but the difficulties that were ahead would put not just their bonder to the test, but also the beliefs of the morning. Delivered news that rocked San Diego, and everyone engaged in their incredible journey. Evolution Gardens' initial offer for Charlie was matched by zoo employees, adding an extensive research grant package that made it almost impossible to refuse. With the situation weighing heavily on her shoulders, Sarah started to pace her office. They had scheduled the same situation, Soder, his normally assured manner, had been rattled by a board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. He is adamant about seeing this through, describing it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance for the zoo's growth. Max's behavioral observation and improved health indicators were displayed on Sarah's desk charts. Logs showing their developing relationship and, most crucially, video proof of their special relationships. But would scientific proof be sufficient to overcome the zoo's attraction to financial security? Charlie and Max, however, were contentedly oblivious to the human drama going on around them in their enclosure. Charlie went over and beyond in the morning to show why their relationship was so unique with his incredible ingenuities. He used his problem-solving abilities to figure out how to change one of the feeding obstacles so Max could participate more easily. "Watch this," Dr. Rodriguez said, displaying Sarah's video from the morning's observation. "Sarah isn't just sharing space anymore, he's teaching Max how to get the food more effectively." The video showed Charlie actively trying to enhance Max's quality of life by showing him a method, repeatedly demonstrating how to use soft motions to control the puzzle feeder without putting undue stress on the lion cub's fragile bones. Max kept a close eye on Charlie's every action before trying the activity himself with unexpected success. "This transcends basic friendship," Sarah quarreled, "while we are seeing species-breaking cognitive collaboration during an emergency meeting with senior staff. This bond could stop revolutionary advancements in our society, in addition to having an impact on their emotional health, knowledge of animal intelligence." But as the demand mounted, Evolution Gardens took the lead. Dr. Alina Chen, a scientist, will personally supervise Charlie's assessment. Presence in the zoo produced a tense environment that even the animals appeared to perceive. According to Dr. Chen's presentation to the staff, Singapore is state-of-the-art, and Charlie would have access to the cleanest medical technology available. His intelligence may be fully examined and expanded. Major issue that Dr. Chen neglected to mention, though, was the price of separating two creatures that had developed such a strong bond during her visit to the enclosure she saw. Max had been trying to grab a new toy that was positioned just a bit too high for Sarah to reach, something that even she had not seen before. It was a suggestion made by Max's block. His comfort, rather than merely observing or stealing the item, Charlie evaluated the circumstances and started moving objects in the area to make a safe, mild inclination so Max could get to the toy without Dr. Chen. Straining his extraordinary problem-solving skills, grumbled while taking thorough notes on their relationship surpassing the inherent obstacles that Charlie's celebration of Max's successful grasp for the toy should have prevented them from becoming buddies. In his triumph, he described a relationship the zoo's marketing staff had that went much beyond simple coexistence. Started making money off of their narrative by producing goods with stylized Max and Charlie t-shirts. Educational resources and stuffed animals were swept off the shelves of the gift shop. Although the revenue was significant, it also made the public's already difficult situation even more confusing. During the afternoon meeting, Lisa Chen, the marketing director for Loves Them, reported that our visitor numbers have risen since the gas gathering. As the day went on, Sarah noted minor changes, and their story went viral, making them the zoo's face. Charlie frequently appeared to be more protective of Max than usual in both animals' behavior. Putting himself between his companion and the swarms of onlookers Maxie usually avoided around guests. Maxie never returned to the table during that day. Hearing James pushing nearer to Charlie that night, their relationship clearly becoming stronger despite other influences. As Sarah was getting ready to present at the board meeting, James unexpectedly stopped by and brought a tablet displaying the enclosure's security footage after hours, which showed Charlie deliberately gathering their favorite toys to his sleeping area to create a communal area. James murmured softly, his voice full of emotion, "We can't let them be separated." That seemed to reassure them both. Protecting something special and priceless, as night is now more important than research or money. Sarah stayed in her office, surrounded by study papers, as the zoo collapsed. At tomorrow's board meeting, impassioned pleas would decide not only the fate of two extraordinary animals, but also the future of what they stood for. the potential for friendship and love to surpass all natural boundaries. She could see the lights from the observation cameras in Max and Charlie's cage flashing through her window. Two unlikely buddies slept soundly, with stars in the darkness, oblivious to the fact that their extraordinary bond had turned into the focal point of a storm that threatened to destroy them. An unexpected occurrence occurred on the morning of the board meeting. Max had initially declined his breakfast. Sarah found herself making this observation with trembling hands once Charlie entered his life, knowing it might be apprehended. His vital signs are indicating elevated stress levels, which is the first indication of regression. Dr. Rodriguez stated that after reviewing the medical data from the morning, it seemed as though he could feel it. Even when we try to conceal it, animals have a remarkable ability to feel when something is off. The boardroom was alive with anxious activity as participants walked in, displaying a range of words aloud by Peter. And before the session started, Patient Sorda, the neurologist on the table, Director Thompson, who was seated at the head of the table with Evolution Gardens on either side, spoke about determination and uncertainty. Sarah, the zoo's financial advisor, observed that each of them carried files with numbers and forecasts that reduced the unique link between Max and Charlie to chilly numbers. Before we started, Sam started to make some simple generalizations. As Thompson reached for his gavel, linked her iPad to the display screen in the room, which showed live video from the cage during the scene. Charlie was trying something new, so he collected a few soft enrichment materials and stopped every whisper in the room. Objects and was carefully positioning them around Max, who hadn't yet touched his breakfast. The Capuchin gestures were soft, even sensitive, as he surrounded his friend with protection. Sarah clarified that her steady voice, in spite of her rushing heart, is not merely a caregiving behavior. Charlie is displaying emotional intelligence by establishing a comfortable environment for Max. In what a lot of people don't realize, and interspecies notions about interspecies relationships, Dr. Chin leaned forward that there is clear scientific interest, and the consequences for cognition are intriguing. He is therefore considerably more important to our research program. Just think of what we could discover by examining this degree of license, a regulated environment that fosters emotional intelligence. James said from his spot by the door that what you're seeing isn't taking place in a lab. Rather, it's happening because these two creatures have developed a sincere bond that cannot be duplicated in a laboratory. When financial estimates were given, the conversation became heated, and Evolution Gardens' offer increased even further, significant currently, including plans for a brand new wildlife conservation center with their name on it. The figures were astounding, offering to ensure the zoo's financial stability for many years to come. But the executives were debating when they noticed something remarkable happening in the cage via the live feed. Seeing Charlie start a habit that had grown to be a daily occurrence between the unlikely friends, he began working through one of their communal puzzle feeders, but rather of taking the goodies for himself. Some board members started to turn away as Sarah begged them to keep watching. This is significant because Charlie brought Max his assortment of candies and arranged them in a particular pattern only later, once the observation team had learned to identify their special communication style, did Max eventually show interest in eating and taking his friend's offer. They have even created their own language. Sarah outlined how their relationship is about communication rather than just friendship, with emotions slipping into her words. Breaking this relationship based on mutual trust and support would be more than just cruel. It would be destroying what we've never before observed in research on animal behavior. The board meeting went on for hours, with disputes bouncing back and forth. Fourth, research opportunities, scientific value, and publicity potential were compared with financial forecasts. Throughout it all, the live feed kept displaying Max and Charlie's straightforward exchanges, which revealed a lot about the profundity of their bond as the light rose higher in the sky, creating long shadows that were visible through the boardroom windows. Max had started acting in a way they hadn't observed before, and Sarah noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. He had been pacing from the beginning of his seclusion, but this time it wasn't aimless. Even though there was tension in the air around them, He was keeping track of Charlie's moves and staying in touch with his friend. "In closer, we must think about the long-term effects," Director Thompson said, his voice piercing the line. "We have an obligation to consider if this offer could support our conservation efforts over the next 10 years. Sarah stood, her study notes tightly gripped. "For the greater good. But it's generally accepted. Which is more valuable? The right of observing and defending, or a figure in a bank account? Something genuinely remarkable that has the potential to alter our perception of what animals are capable of as a whole." As everyone was ready to cast their votes, the live feed revealed a last scene that would live on in everyone's memories forever. Charlie had went back to Max's side, where they sat in their customary location, with the capuchin's tiny hand resting softly on the picture of lion cub's man described a bond that went beyond all natural limits and scientific anticipation, and every monetary factor. The future of their remarkable friendship now hung in the balance, as numbers and emotions fought silently in the boardroom. What none of them understood that a demonstration was still the strongest justification for keeping them together, of loyalty and intelligence that would contradict their preconceived notions about the potential for love between people. Nonetheless, the board was forced to continue deliberating for an additional week, since its verdict remained deadlocked. Charlie and Max would reveal the depth of their connection in ways that no one could have predicted during that pivotal time. He may have predicted that zoo visitors would see something the morning following the inconclusive board meeting. Amazing Charlie had started gathering fallen leaves and little branches and putting them in different patterns throughout their common area. Initially, the actions appeared haphazard, until, when Sarah was documenting, Dr. Rodriguez made a stunning discovery about the spacing. He's making sure that every little thing is safe so that Max can move around. In fact, he's designing their surroundings to meet Max's condition without putting undue strain on his delicate bones. The scientific community became quite interested in the revelation, and scholars from large universities started asking permission to witness this extraordinary behavior. The zoo administration was forced to choose between evolution and Garden's generous offer, and the increasing scholarly importance of what they were seeing transcend the scope of a simple tool. Usage. Sarah clarified to a group of curious scientists that Charlie isn't simply active, he is changing his surroundings to benefit another species by adapting to them. The ramifications for our comprehension of explanations are far more interesting and less controversial. Although animal intelligence is astounding, the strongest proof of their remarkable bond was found during a new enrichment specialist who was not aware of Max's condition presented an unexpected hurdle. Kepper had put in a feeding system that was too demanding for the lion cub to use. As a result, even the Charlie spent hours researching the process and experimenting with various methods, leaving the most skeptics stunned. And ultimately coming up with a solution, he created a temporary lever system, employed in part by Max's fostering activities. Using a variety of toys and branches, Max was able to get the food with little muscular effort. Dr. Chen acknowledged that the degree of problem-solving demonstrated here is unparalleled. Viewing the video with increasing awe, realizing that he's not only assisting, but also inventing instruments that aren't for himself but the zoo's visitors, were equally enthralled with another species. Gathered every day to observe the strange duo, with their phones documenting every exchange that went viral on social media. Video of Charlie and Max's heartwarming tale with global hashtags like Unexpected Friends, KN Charlie and Max, started to gain popularity over the world. But it was inside. Their most memorable encounter took place on a calm evening after the crowds had dispersed. When Sarah was working late, saw strange activity on the CCTV feed in her office. Charlie seemed to teach Max a new game that requires careful coordination and sensitive motions. He's not just playing with Max. James watched the video with Sarah and noted that he is helping him get better. Every interaction in game is thoughtfully crafted to help Max gain strength without running the danger of getting hurt. Charlie was seen in the video making gestures while encouraging Max and waiting for him to imitate them. It was a physical treatment session presented as play, using quiet vocalizations and gentle touches, an empathy and intelligence that disproved all assumptions on animal consciousness. Evolution Gardens. While seeing the same clip, representatives noticed monetary signs and research prospects due to this level of cognitive impairment. They contended that development is precisely the reason we must examine him in our facility. What could we discover about ape intelligence in a controlled setting? If they didn't have the point that Charlie's actions were noteworthy for reasons other than his IQ, every innovation he made and every issue he resolved was contextualized. Inspired by his relationship with Max, love, not science, was what propelled his remarkable growth. Over the course of the week, Max's medical reports revealed ongoing progress in his movement, as movement became more assured, as his bone density increased. In the midst of despair, Rodriguez said recent scans showed something amazing. Charlie's physical therapy games were actually more successful than the conventional therapies they were employing. So he developed a rehabilitation program, specifically designed to meet Max's demands. Dr. Rodriguez described going over the data. It was impossible for a human to create anything so well suited to Max's physical constraints and his psychological requirements, and the strain from Evolution Gardens increased. Expanded their offer once more, including provisions for a cutting-edge research wing devoted to studying links across species. The financial bundle was now too large to overlook, compelling even the most understanding board members to take into account the practical ramifications. Yet, at the last board session, approaching Charlie and Max, who went about their everyday lives without noticing the human drama going on around them, interactions had evolved a unique rhythm and vocabulary that revealed a deeper meaning than science could. Measure of money could purchase in their common area, encircled by the resources of their special bond. Something that went beyond nature's and nurture's bounds, a connection that tested not only our laboratory. Sarah prepared her final presentation. She considered not only human idea of love, but also our understanding of animal relationships. She was aware that not just the fate of the board will be decided in the following 24 hours, of two extraordinary creatures, but the way we will perceive animals in the future, able to think, feel, and accomplish when given the opportunity to develop. On the morning of the last board meeting, genuine connections showed up with a surprising development that might alter everything as the surveillance cameras on the zoo grounds caught the first rays of sunshine. Recorded video that would serve as the strongest defense for Charlie and Max's continued relationship. One of the enrichment platforms in their enclosure became unstable due to a failure. Often, the platform, safe and secure, now presented a possible risk, and what transpired next showed a Charlie woke up earlier, with a degree of cooperation and intellect that would have left even the most hardened skeptic dumbfounded, observed the instability sooner than usual, and instead of reacting with panic or flight, he started a meticulous review of the service back systems. During the structure's examination, he tested several areas and identified any weak spots using the security footage. Sarah yelled at the newly arrived Dr. Rodriguez with a precision that bordered on engineering. He's not just avoiding the risk, he's actively trying to prevent an accident by getting ready for the board meeting early. As the shining glasses meandered down the board's arms, he repositioned them so at the pH readings, the board client's health and truth meters skyrocketed. As Charlie started gathering things from the enclosure's thick branches and unused enrichment items, they watched. Even some of their toy blocks, which he began making after great consideration, a barrier that successfully encloses the unstable area. Yet the most amazing part came when Max woke up and instinctively started down his typical morning route. Charlie used a series of delicate touches to position himself between his companion and the possible danger right away, in gentle voice, guiding Max away from the precarious perch and presenting him with a substitute. Dr. Rodriguez heard his voice and concluded that this wasn't merely defensive behavior. Emotionally intelligent and capable of complicated problem solutions, he is not only acknowledged for the threat but managed to convey it to a different species. The video swiftly spread to the board members, including Dr. Chen from Evolution Gardens, are showing up for the meeting. As she observed Charlie's behavior, she found it difficult to keep her professional distance. She acknowledged that the cognitive powers on exhibit are remarkable, but what's really amazing is the drive behind them. Everything they do is focused on keeping Max safe from what happened that morning. Scarcely resolved when another circumstance emerged that would yield the last piece of proof in this incredible tale. Though when the maintenance crew came to fix the platform, they caused an unexpected disturbance in the enclosure. Max is still. His vital monitors showed signals of anxiety, and he became wary around strangers, revealed high levels of stress, and his body language showed that he was reverting to his previous habits of withdrawal. Was a crucial point at which the advancements they had made together would start to fall apart. Charlie's reaction was this. He started what the observers would subsequently characterize as a quick and clever. He had created a comfort routine, a set of tactful exchanges and diversions during their time together. He established a peaceful area in the middle of the chaos, utilizing their common activities and toys. Max is effectively protected from the situation's tension by pandemonium. And he's not only reassuring Max. Sarah told the gathering board members that he is actively working to keep his health from getting worse. As the morning wore on, this degree of emotional support, unprecedented in interspecies relationships, grew. Charlie started adding aspects of their usual physical activities, which made his acts even more amazing. Including therapeutic activities in the comfort regimen would guarantee that Max's development wouldn't be. The maintenance crew worked swiftly to fix the platform despite the tense circumstances. However, the actual repair Charlie was working and his constant focus on Max's needs and flexibility in modifying their daily schedules to adapt to the unique situation and his unwavering emotional support showed something that no study. Sarah stood in front of the board with a proposal or financial offer that may match. The video from the morning that is playing behind her shows that what we are seeing is more than simply a fascinating scientific occurrence. Stated in a firm, conviction-filled voice that the partnership has surpassed all natural and scientific boundaries. Expectations and all of our assumptions regarding animal consciousness were supported by the facts. But the pressure from Evolution Gardens remained fierce, and their last proposal now contained clauses for a global conservation project that aims to establish the San Diego Zoo as a world authority in wildlife conservation. Just before the board was about to make their final verdict, a final video clip showed Charlie and Max were carefully training Max's man a behavior at a calm moment after the commotion of the morning had subsided. That had turned into their comforting and bonding ritual. What transpired next would be spoken about in scientific circles for years later. Maxell, who was typically inactive throughout these sessions, started to imitate Charlie's. It was a gesture of trust as he cautiously reached out to touch his friend's fur in return. The boardroom went quiet as they observed comprehension and a level of connectedness that went against all natural instincts. This straightforward yet significant exchange at that precise moment made the decision they had to make become evidently. They were choosing whether to preserve or destroy something, rather than merely deciding the fate of two creatures. Genuinely remarkable. Sarah's last remarks reverberated around the room as the members got ready to vote. Certain things can only be quantified in acts of truth, while others cannot be quantified in money or study data. The board's loyalty, and in the kind of love that transcends all boundaries we believe to exist in the natural world. The unanimous decision was the first in the history of the San Diego Zoo. The events of the morning had shown that a breakthrough in our knowledge of animal consciousness and emotional relationships cannot be purchased with money. It became utterly clear that our thinking and mental constructs are exquisitely constructed that broke down barriers between species. Dr. Chen emerged, shocking everyone in the boardroom. Evolution Gardens would want to change our suggestion, she declared, displaying a professional manner. Softening rather than moving Charlie, we suggest starting a collaborative study. Director Thompson leaned forward, excited. We'll bring our resources to them here at the San Diego Zoo, recommending that instead of separating them precisely, we work together, Dr. Chen said, bringing out a fresh set of problems. One thing is evident from the documents we saw this morning: the importance of their relationship rests in its authenticity. Trying to replicate it in a lab would be completely missing the purpose. Sarah shed tears as welling. As the new arrangement developed, she believed that Max and Charlie would not only be together, but also that their narrative would serve as the cornerstone of an innovative study program centered on interspecies relationships, and the zoo's marketing team wasted no time in spreading the good news on social media about animals' emotional intelligence. Burst with joyous words as Charlie and Max's eternal trend started globally. But Charlie and Max were blissfully oblivious to the true festivities taking place in the enclosure. Following their victory, Evolution Gardens carefully changed their enclosure over the course of the following few months. Resources made it possible to purchase cutting-edge monitoring and enrichment systems that are intended to support their special bond while enabling researchers to record their exchanges. Take a peek at this James McIntyre that Charlie had found the new observation screens one morning and was already applying them to his everyday activities with Max, and his capacity for problem-solving appeared to increase. Every time the research project presented a new problem, scientists from all around the world were keen to investigate what was gaining notoriety as the Charlie-Max phenomenon, but their findings significantly beyond their original expectations. Dr. Rodriguez's most recent medical reports revealed that Max's bone condition had significantly improved. He stated at a scientific symposium, "The density has increased beyond our most hopeful predictions." In fact, Charlie's physical therapy games are now used as models for wildlife rehabilitation initiatives. The zoo introduced the Boundaries of Love educational program globally, utilizing Max and Charlie's narrative to teach kids about friendship, kindness, and dispelling stereotypes in the classroom. Groups came to wonder every day to observe as the unusual duo displayed their special bond. Sarah's research articles on the lessons they taught us about their connection became standard reading in veterinary colleges and animal behavior programs. In her final paper, she stated that friendship and love are considerably more powerful than our human abilities. Because of these feelings, the zoo had a special celebration a year following the board's vote. Visitors from all over the world came to the Friendship Without Boundaries Festival, attending the event to observe the remarkable collaboration that had upended our preconceived notions about animal relationships. Using the new enrichment resources, Charlie went above and above by creating a complex frenzy. The lion C, now entering adolescent, moved with Max in a variety of activities that demonstrated his increased mobility. A self-assurance that was unattainable a year ago. It goes beyond physical progress. As Dr. Chen saw, when they engage with me, they have created a unique language and communication style that blends touch, gestures, and vocalizations, are transforming our comprehension of animal communication. The study project's success resulted in the creation of comparable programs at zoos around the world, have made it their mission to discover and raise unusual animals. Max and Charlie had become pioneers in their friendships, and their tale inspired a new strategy for animal care and rehabilitation. As the sun sank on the last day of the festival, Sarah discovered herself grimacing. Charlie and Max were going about their regular nightly routine when the capuchin gently returned to her customary observation post. While Max rumbled with satisfaction, James continued, "You know what the most amazing thing is? That you're grooming your friend's man. After all this time and all the research and observations, it's still shocking to see her at the window." We learned something new about the emotions that animals can have every day from the Max and Charlie story. Their surprising bond, which not only saved Max's life, but also offered up new possibilities, never ceased to amaze and inspire. They demonstrated that love transcends all boundaries and species in our understanding of animal consciousness. In their cage, nature, rather than science, has become a globally recognized symbol of unexpected kindness. Max and Charlie maintained their connection because they were two people who had always found something in one another that, surpassing all natural knowledge and scientific predictions, their relationship had not only endured the difficulties they confronted, but had become more resilient, serving as a beacon of empathy and hope in a world that all too frequently concentrated on the San Diego Zoo, their differences rather than their links. The story went on to demonstrate that the most important discoveries frequently do not result from our meticulous preparations and research, but from the infrequent times when we allow love to guide us beyond all limits. We hope that Max and Charlie's incredible journey has had as much of an impact on you as it has on us, our closest listeners. This story of an unexpected friendship touched our hearts and served as a reminder that love has no bounds. Boundaries. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if this story touched you. Give it a like for more motivational tales like this one. We've put together a dedicated playlist with just as touching tales of remarkable animal connections. Click the link on your left to access it. Join our community by leaving a comment below with your thoughts on this incredible friendship experience. Love together. Let's rejoice in the wonder that occurs when we let our hearts be open to new relationships. I'll see you in the following tale.